2 U.S. Army service members are missing tonight in southwestern Morocco after going on a hike following the conclusion of the day's activities at African Lion, America's largest annual joint military exercise on the African continent. AFRICOM confirmed the soldiers went missing near the remote city of Tantan in mountainous terrain, and a search and rescue operation involving American, Moroccan, and partner nation forces is now underway. This is, first and foremost, a story about 2 human beings in danger, and we hope fervently they're found safe. But it's also a story that raises serious, urgent questions about the scope, the cost, and the strategic rationale of America's sprawling military footprint across 53 African nations. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Does this incident expose a deeper problem with how America deploys its military on a continent where the results, by almost any measure, have been deeply disappointing?
Thanks, Emma. And let's be absolutely clear. The first priority tonight is those 2 soldiers, and every resource should be directed at bringing them home safely. That's non-negotiable. But you're right that this incident doesn't exist in a vacuum. African Lion has been running since 2004. AFRICOM has been consuming billions of American taxpayer dollars since 2007. And what does America have to show for it? The Sahel has seen 6 military coups since 2020 alone. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, countries where American security assistance poured in for years, have expelled American forces and rolled out the welcome mat for Russian Wagner mercenaries. Douglas Murray would say, and I think he'd be absolutely right, that Western nations have confused military activity with military strategy. Presence is not a policy. Exercises are not a doctrine. And the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the Pentagon wants to say out loud is that this enormous institutional machine has been very effective at perpetuating itself and very ineffective at producing the stability it promised Congress 20 years ago.
But Sophia, isn't that a bit unfair? Morocco specifically is one of America's most cooperative and stable African partners. They signed the Abraham Accords, they're consistent on counterterrorism, and African Lion in Morocco is arguably one of AFRICOM's more defensible programs. Are you throwing the whole enterprise out because of failures elsewhere on the continent? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, Emma's actually made a really important distinction that I think Sophia is glossing over, and I'll say that directly. Morocco is not Niger. Morocco is not Mali. The strategic relationship with Rabat is genuinely productive. It serves American interests in North Africa, and the African Lion exercise in that specific context has real value for interoperability with a reliable partner. Here's what I think Sophia is missing. The problem isn't the existence of AFRICOM or the fact that America has African partnerships. The problem is the absence of prioritization and the absence of accountability for outcomes. According to AFRICOM's own data, over $2.5 billion in security assistance has flowed to African partner nations. That investment produced American-trained officers who then staged coups. That's a specific, measurable failure that demands a specific, targeted response, not a wholesale retreat from the continent.
I hear what James is saying, but with respect, that misses the point entirely. Yes, Morocco is different from Niger. I know that. But the institutional problem is that AFRICOM doesn't treat them differently. It treats the entire continent as one enormous mandate to be managed with the same toolkit regardless of the strategic environment. And here's the thing. When you build a bureaucracy with a 53-nation mandate, you inevitably end up doing a lot of things adequately rather than a few things excellently. American military strength, real strength, the kind that deters China in the Pacific and Russia in Europe, requires concentration, not dispersal. Every dollar and every soldier committed to a low-return African exercise is a dollar and a soldier not committed to the Taiwan Strait or the Baltic. That's not isolationism. That's basic strategic arithmetic, and Washington has been getting it wrong for 20 years.
Here's what I want to know, and this is the question that keeps me up at night. If America reduces its African engagement, what fills the vacuum? We've seen what happens when the West retreats. James, where do you see this going over the next 6 months?
The way I see this playing out, and I want to be careful here because nothing is certain, there are really 3 plausible trajectories. The first is strategic drift. AFRICOM absorbs this incident, makes cosmetic adjustments, and nothing fundamental changes. That's historically the most likely outcome because bureaucracies don't reform themselves. The second possibility is a genuine congressional-driven review, which is more plausible now than it was 3 years ago, given the fiscal pressure and the growing bipartisan skepticism about open-ended commitments. But the third scenario is the dangerous one: disengagement without replacement. History tells us that when America withdraws without a coherent handoff strategy, the vacuum doesn't stay empty. China's infrastructure investment, plus Russian military presence, is already the operating model across the Sahel. If that extends to North Africa, the strategic consequences for Europe, for NATO's southern flank, for migration flows into the Mediterranean, that's a serious long-term problem that makes the current AFRICOM budget look cheap by comparison.
Here's what concerns me most, and it's slightly different from James's framing. The real risk isn't just what happens in Africa. It's what this pattern of strategic overextension does to American military culture and readiness at home. We have 2 soldiers missing tonight because they went hiking in mountainous terrain after a day of exercises in a country most Americans couldn't find on a map. That's not a criticism of those soldiers. It's a criticism of a system that has normalized the idea that American military personnel should be everywhere, all the time, in every corner of the globe, without a rigorous cost-benefit analysis attached to each deployment. Ben Shapiro has made this point. America's military strength is not infinite, and treating it as if it is doesn't honor the troops. It exploits them. If this incident prompts even a single serious Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on AFRICOM's strategic rationale and return on investment, then something meaningful might emerge from what is otherwise a very worrying night.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen. A genuinely important conversation, and one that Washington has been avoiding for far too long. Tonight, though, our thoughts are entirely with those 2 missing soldiers and the team searching for them in Morocco's mountains. One thing is absolutely certain. Somewhere in the Pentagon tonight, someone is staring at a very uncomfortable set of questions they don't yet have answers to.